The tragic case of Charlie Gard. I think Charlie's fate was sealed quite some time ago. I think it's a tragic case from all angles. I don't think there are any winners. Not that you'd want to be a winner in such a case unless that winning was the improvement of health of the child involved. This is the second high-profile case that we've seen that has shown the state intervening in areas that they probably shouldn't intervene in. The research team in America have shown pretty categorically that their treatment can be incredibly effective, and has already gone to improve the lives of a number of children. But that's not really the issue in this case. What worries me in this case is the fact that the state intervened and the state said, no, you don't know what's best for your child, silly parent. We must make this decision for you. What pains me even more is the fact that the democratic will of the people raised all of the money, and their democratic right to choose to give that money to Charlie's parents for his treatment. And I think that that was completely disregarded, not only by the state, but by the court and by the hospital. I'm concerned when I hear stories of members of staff receiving death threats, because I have no doubts whatsoever that the frontline staff that were caring for Charlie did so with the same impeccable level of professionalism that they do on a daily basis. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. My issue is with the management of Great Ormond Street Hospital and how their legal representation was managed. As a parent, if I was told there's a 1% chance, I would fight heaven and earth to make sure that that opportunity and that chance was given. Absolutely. And there's an issue that's sticking in my mind with regards to Aisha King, who some of you may remember was a young child who had a rare brain tumour. And there was a treatment being made available in Prague called proton therapy. I'm not going to say for 1 second I understand what proton therapy is. I don't, but it was a revolutionary therapy at the time, which ironically is now or will be very soon available on the NHS. Doctor said they wouldn't support it. It wouldn't be beneficial, and it would have caused unnecessary suffering to the child. So Aisha's parents proceeded to take him from the hospital and fly him out of the country, and they took him to Prague, I believe. They were arrested sometime afterwards in Spain and were held for 3 days in a Spanish prison. The real kicker of this is they were charged with neglect. Aisha King is now 8 years old and he's back at school. But there's a twist to this tale. They've been in the press recently as May, I believe, this year, with regards follow-up treatment, everything from speech therapy to monitoring of his remission status that the NHS aren't providing. And you can understand the parents' viewpoint is that they feel that this is some kind of revenge, even though his parents have both paid into this system. But what's just happened with Charlie Gard should disgust everybody, regardless of his chances of survival, regardless of his long-term prognosis. That doesn't matter. It makes no difference. What should disgust everybody is that the state intervened and said, you do not have the right. Well, hang on a minute. I thought we were a free democratic country, and yet it just appears to be yet another example of the state taking control and telling us what we can and we can't do. It gives more credence to the birth certificate conspiracy that part of that process is to relinquish ownership and control of your own children. There's a couple of good examples of this where children have been seized by social services and then the children have had to be returned within 24 hours because the parents never registered the birth. And I believe the term comes, it's when you register a birth and you fill out the relevant paperwork and you receive a birth certificate, fundamentally what you do is you make your child a ward of the court. You give them to the state. Because I find it amazing that as a parent, if there was a treatment that had a slim chance of success, that is my right as my child's parent to make that decision for them. That's part of the job. That's part of the routine of being a parent, is that you make the best decisions that you possibly can with the evidence that's available to you for the long-term benefit of your children. How come Charlie Gard's parents weren't given that right? It was clearly taken away from them. Not only that the legal process was drawn out to such a point where the slim chance became no chance. Yet the same court, let's not forget, will keep a man who was an active outdoor sportsman who now tragically has a form of locked-in syndrome where the ultimate result will be he will not even be able to communicate with those closest to him. Yet we feel that it's appropriate to keep that man alive. The contradiction, the oxymoron of the situation just makes you think, how is this about the best interests of human beings? I pray that Charlie finds some peace wherever that may be, whatever you believe in. I think the final insult is the fact that Great Ormond Street Hospital and the courts will not even allow his parents the compassion to have their son die at home. This is not something that is beyond reasonable. This isn't a ridiculous request, an unacceptable request. And it's something that we do for patients in palliative care all across the UK. We give them that opportunity, that right to die in their own home. This just seems to be the final kick in the teeth that these two people didn't deserve. I made a post on Facebook that was quite provocative and was for a reason, because we're all responsible to a degree. As parents in particular, we all have a moral responsibility to take, because I think as parents we should have all been stood outside the High Court. We should have all been making sure our voices were heard, because we live in an illusion of freedom. We don't. We live in a dictatorship. We're told what to do, pretty much when to do it, what we can and can't do, regardless of whether that's about personal choice. I am a libertarian in the true sense of the word. I believe in absolute free speech in its complete entirety, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with what you're hearing as part of that process of free speech. But I know what? Even if it was the likes of Anjem Choudhury, Nick Griffin, with their poisonous, disgusting rhetoric, I would defend it with my liberty, with my life, for their right to say it. But I also believe in absolute free choice. So long as it doesn't have a significant impact of harm on other people. And I don't believe that that's relevant in this case. If there was a chance, that chance should have been offered. It should have been taken. Shit, we should have paid for it. We shouldn't have expected the parents to raise that money. It almost seems an element of egotistical arrogance that how dare the Americans think that they can achieve something that we can't. But as I put in a post recently, America is the last bastion of science, it would appear. They still have this wonderful, beautiful passion and belief in science at its purest level, that it means something, where it hasn't become a corporate entity or part of a wider agenda. It's science for science's sake, which is one of the reasons we see so many advancements coming out of the United States. I think we've seen a terrible injustice, but more importantly, I think we've seen yet another step towards the totalitarian police state, where we are no longer allowed to make decisions that we should have a God-given right to make. We've allowed a process for two parents to be made a million times more difficult than it should have been. And situations like this, and I've been in one very similar with a child that was very ill when they were born. It makes climbing Everest in a pair of flip-flops seem like a piece of piss. There are lots of problems facing our country right now. There are lots of problems facing humanity right now. But the first thing we need to do is come together and say, are we happy about the way that our government is nannying us and treating us in a manner that we're not fit enough to make the decisions for our own children, for fuck's sake? Now, I'd like to say, people that are sending death threats and posting vile shit on social media, just stop. Because it isn't those people. This is the wider political agenda of Great Ormond Street Hospital, the legal representation and the High Court, and the way that this entire sickly process has been handled by the media. Spare a thought when you put your children to bed tonight, that you may not have the right to protect them and to give them what they need if the state disagree with you. And that's the most important thing you should be thinking about.